Let's return to the story on safeguards mechanism. This is the way which Labor is saying it will help to reduce emissions, but it needs support in the Senate and it needs the support of the Greens because the coalition is saying a flat no. Joining me live is the Greens leader, Adam Bandt. Thanks very much for your time. A busy day, I know. You appear to have conceded you're not going to get what you wanted, a straight-out ban on any new coal or gas. Is that pretty evident to you?
Well, the government's got to justify why they want to open up more coal and gas mines in a climate crisis. We're a year on from the floods in Northern Rivers in New South Wales. I'm yet to see a government minister go into Northern Rivers and say that they want to open up new coal and gas mines and make the climate crisis worse. We just know that the only chance we've got of meeting climate targets is to stop opening new coal and gas mines. Scientists are saying that, UN Secretary General, International Energy Agency, they're all saying that. The ball's in the government's court now justify why they think they need to open up new coal and gas.
Well, I know we've spoken about this before, but ACCC and AEMO are essentially saying we'll fall short on gas in the short term, within a year or two, and we can't get renewable projects in that time to replace them. So that's the reason.
Well, last year, we towards the end of last year, we gave the government the powers to reserve gas for Australian businesses and households. Now, those powers are there to be exercised. Australia is awash with gas at the moment. The problem is that the big gas corporations are sucking it up, sending it overseas together with the profits tax-free. They often don't even pay for the gas in the first place. The government now has the power to reserve however much gas is needed for the Australian economy during the transition. Yeah, so we don't need
albeit that,
gas
as we've said,
to power the Australian
we'd be
economy.
cancelling contracts. But look, we've spoken about that before. I just thought I'd mention that. On the negotiation, is Labor saying anything is on the table that it's willing to bend on?
So I don't want to run the negotiations in public and appreciate that you'd probably like me to, but we're having good faith discussions with the government at the moment. We've put forward an offer, not an ultimatum, and we've said we'd pass the safeguard unamended if the government agrees to stop making the problem worse and stop pouring the petrol on the fire.
Which would be no new coal or gas, and they've said no. So are you putting more proposals forward?
I think they've still got to come up with a justification for that will wash
you can say
in the international...
Sure, but they've said no.
But,
we had the
and others have come forward and have said that there are potentially other ways of addressing this. So, for example, could we look at a climate trigger to ensure that any new projects don't make the climate crisis worse?
I'll get to that in a moment, but just in terms of how the process is working, are they giving you suggestions, or is it up to you to keep coming up with things? Are they showing, if you don't want to mention items, that's fine, but are they showing inclination to say we could do this, we could do this?
Look, we're having good faith negotiations, and obviously that means both sides are talking, and we would like to see legislation passed that cuts pollution from coal and gas. That, to our mind, is the test of a good climate policy. Does pollution from coal and gas go up or down? And in our view, it should go down. Now, are we going to end up with everything we want out of this? Is there anyone going to end up with everything they want out of this? Well, we're in a parliament where no one has a majority in both houses of parliament. Government's vote went backwards at the election. The Greens' vote went up. They've got to deal with the parliament as they find it. And so that means everyone has to give a bit.
How would a climate trigger work? So a minister gets something for approval. How would that trigger work? They would be able to approve it, but there'd be a trigger to not approve it. What would your proposal be? I know it gets complicated, but in a simple sense.
So in a simple sense, it basically says that given that we know that the climate crisis is the biggest threat to the environment, because the State of the Environment report has said that.
As in emissions is what you're talking about.
Well, that's the State of the Environment report. And so the minister, we put forward a climate trigger bill that says above a certain threshold, well, that's just too much of an impact on the environment. Below that, the minister has to consider whether or not approving this is going to...
threshold being the size of that.
That's right.
Mine.
Now, others have put forward different ways of doing it. That's what we think an effective climate trigger would be. The Climate Council has put forward another proposal, which is, well, look, let's... while we work out what our environment laws should look like, let's pause all new coal and gas projects. People are coming up with creative suggestions about a way through this. We will look at any suggestions that are put forward on the table in good faith.
But if a trigger existed, because it's not a ban, there'd have to be a way for a minister to have, for example, a new gas project take on board the ACCC or AEMO saying, hey, we've got a gas shortage, take on board other concerns and still be able to make a call either way. It would be able to work in that manner. It wouldn't be a straight out ban.
Well, our proposal involves a threshold above a certain amount. Well,
which would
that's
be
just
what?
too much climate damage.
Which would be what?
We're saying 100,000 megatons would be an appropriate threshold. But if the government says...
How many of the current projects are above that?
But at the moment, though, what we've got is we've got a difference of view at the moment, as you've alluded to before, where the government is still saying no, they still want new coal and gas projects opened. Now, that's from one of the things that we've learned this week in Parliament is the government's own modellers, Reputex, have released a report this week that says if you just look at the projected emissions from the gas plans that the government is projecting will go ahead in their own emissions projections, we blow the safeguard budget by 35 million tonnes, right? And so this question of new coal and gas, even within the government's own scheme, has to be addressed or we're going to blow the targets.
It might be a quasi-ban essentially at that size. I want to get you on one other quick topic, superannuation changes. Nick McKim said it's not far enough. 1.9 million is what he was speaking about in terms of when they should kick in. Will you play hardball on that? Will you seek to lower 3 million or could you vote for 3 million anyway?
Well, we want to have discussions with the government, get some superannuation reform. Our view is that if we're going to do it, then we might as well ensure that we're raising revenue to help people deal with the cost of living crisis. And that the proposal that we're putting forward, the $1.9 million cap, bearing in mind that Scott Morrison said a $1.9 million transfer cap was sufficient.
You're changing that from 15 to 30. So is that a deal breaker for you?
Well, we want to have discussions with the government about it. Our view is if we're going to do it, let's raise some revenue.
This is all up to you. So is it a deal breaker?
Well, let's have discussions with the government and see how far we get.
All right, but what does that mean? I mean...
Well, as we saw previously, we saw last year the government bring forward legislation regarding electric vehicles. We had some good discussions with the government and as a result, the Commonwealth Fleet is moving towards EVs and we've got a sunset on the amount of time...
You reckon you can get a bit more
subsidies.
change on them here?
Well, I would hope so because I think if we're going to do it, let's raise some money to help people deal with the cost of living crisis.
Adam Bandt, thanks for your time today.
Thank you.